Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest session of QABC. It's been a while, I apologize for, but yes, we are back and hopefully going to have a few more talks before the year is out. So again, always follow us on our meetup group and also our social medias. Thankfully, I managed to change the logo just in time for this presentation. So it's X, whatever it's called now. We are at QA Beginners Club. On Instagram, QABC_MCR, and on Facebook, if you look for QA Beginners Club, we are there as well. Okay, I'll quickly go through some of the code of conducts. As always, QABC is a safe place to come. It will always be a free event. Unless you want to contribute, fair enough. I'm happy with that. Get some merch out. Yeah, happily do that. Everyone is always welcome. What background you're from, where you're from, who we are. Yep, everyone is always welcome to these sessions. To ask you also really be respectful to others as well. If you do find something that you weren't happy with or has bothered you or this is out of line, yeah, please report anything to me and yeah, we'll see what we can do. And without any breaking of the rules, then yes, you'll be banned from future events, which we have not have done yet. And this is an online session. If you could just feel free to put your cameras on, more than welcome to. However, during the speaker, which we'll come to in a moment, if you could just stay on mute. If you do have something to say or ask, if you could maybe put it into the chat, and we'll try and get it at the end of the presentation, or if it's super urgent, maybe raise the hand, but I probably suggest let it free throw, or if our speaker will say, are there any questions, then that's your opportunity. So without further ado, I shall hand over to our guest speaker today. This is Alistair. And if you request share, I shall hand it over to you. Which is not that.
Okay. All right. Hi there, everybody. And let me just get, I'm trying to post participant disabled screen sharing. Oh, that's a shame.
If you request it, I should be able to.
I have no option to request, I'm afraid. I just got the big green button down the bottom that says share. Yeah.
Okay,
I've
if
got an
I
option to request. There we go.
okay, I've made you co-host, so you should be able
Brilliant.
to share now.
There we go. Awesome. Alrighty.
So it's been a while.
Oh, fine. I won't worry about that. Okay. 1, 2. Desktop 2. Great. Share. System preferences. Oh, wonderful. Excuse me a moment. I need to now have a fight with Zoom. All right.
We have done this before, and we are professionals.
Yeah, I have. This happens a lot. I may leave. I will be back. This is about to kick me out, so apologies.
Well, thank you for coming. We even had a dry run before, but bear with us. We will get there for this presentation. I've seen the slides for this, and yeah, it's a really good insight into what Gherkin is and how we use it in kind of business-driven development and acceptance criteria, and in some cases test cases as well. So it's going to be good. I promise. Really hope he hasn't done a runner. Here we go.
And I'm back. There we go. That was fun. Brief interlude. Right, you may need to re-enable the make me co-host again. Apologies. There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, and let's get that shared there. Cool. Right. Okay, we're in business. Right. Okay. So yes. Apologies for that. So welcome to a talk on an introduction to Gherkin. I'm Al. People call me Alistair, that's fine. But most people call me Al because it's easier. Um, I I don't know. I'm trying to go with efficiencies, and I've got my name down to be one syllable, which is brilliant. After going through an entire lifetime of having to explain of three, so there we are. So yes, an introduction to Gherkin. So first of all, a bit about me. I'm Al. I'm a quality manager and chapter leader at Workforce Software. So I look after a group of QAs and across what's it, 4 or 5 teams now within the chapter that I look after, that I co-look after, which predominantly looks at scheduling. I've been doing testing and working in the quality space for over 20 years. So I joined my place of work in 2001, where it was all fit client, client server, CRT screens, cream coloured PCs and all that stuff. And I've moved on from that to SaaS applications and mobile applications. I've got a 4-year-old daughter's just about to start school. She's busy giving mum a hard time upstairs. I can hear her tearing around upstairs. So this was her last day of nursery today. So in a week or so, she'll be starting school. And I enjoy running and collecting first editions by Tom Clancy, Craig Thomas, and Jean Le Carré. And you may have seen me over the last sort of couple of years presenting talks at MOT staffs or MOT bucks or MOT SFAX. So that would SFAX is the Tunisian meetup group that Emna, who's a testing luminary in the community. She's done lots of talks at I think Agile Testing Days as well on the continent, and I've also done a talk at Southwest Test. So yeah, so that's a bit about me. This is me talking and doing 99-second talks, either at Test Bash. So these two were at Test Bash, and that one was Test Bash Spring last year. Having a joke with Tristan. So yeah, if you were to stalk me on LinkedIn, you would see this as my experience. So as I said, I started in 2001 as a test engineer, and then moved on through various positions to where I am now. So testing as a career, absolutely, it's a thing. And yeah, for anybody that's starting out, it doesn't necessarily have to take you 20 odd years to get where I am. You can probably get there a lot faster because it's taken me ages. So yes, I've made the transition from waterfall to agile methodologies. I love communicating features with the wider business, help my team with software testing approach. So yeah, that's me. I think that was, when was that? That was a couple of years ago. Yeah, 23 years, 3 years ago, at the Seven Bridge 10K. So that was quite fun. Yes, it was that painful. So the grimace is real. So onto the main bit, which actually is why use Gherkin? What's the value? What is this about this thing that sounds like a vegetable anyway? So Gherkin can reduce manual checking. Yes, when you use Gherkin in concert with an automation test framework that likes to leverage this syntax, absolutely, you can have the things that you always want to check running, and you can express those through the use of Gherkin. And therefore, because you're spending less time doing the laborious stuff, you can spend more time doing exploratory testing. I am one of these. My line is that there is a place for both. You can't test everything using your automation suite, and you can't test everything using your manual suite. It is a happy medium of the two. So exploratory testing it gets increased because you're not spending as much time doing the stuff you always need to test. And Gherkin is easier to write and maintain than traditional step tests. So for anybody who's written a multi-step stepped test, will know that you have a step and you have an assertion, and then you have another step, and then you have another assertion, and so on and so forth, until you get to around, I don't know, 30, 40 steps for a feature. And then you've got to maintain that. So if the feature changes, guess what? You're rewriting this. And what you'll see, hopefully in the further into the talk, you will see how concise Gherkin is, and how therefore much easier it is in order to. Well, if we just change it, then it's a lot easier to change and keep on top of, especially if your feature changes. What else have we got? So it allows you to communicate feature behavior to a wider audience. Yes, you can use Gherkin to describe how the system works. In reality, not everybody you would have to push that information. Not every product owner that I've ever known goes and has a look in your repository where your test framework might be, and goes and pulls the Gherkin out. Some do, some don't. So communicating feature behavior to the wider audience, you can say this is how our software works. So you could use it as documentation. It has a straightforward syntax. Yep. Given, when, then. Yep. Absolutely. And it supports behavioral driven development, or biscuit driven development, or even domain driven development, or if you wanted to go down the road of triple D, in defining the behavior of the feature. So the team gathers around and they discuss how the feature or the system is going to behave, and you can use Gherkin to describe those behaviors. So it allows us to gain early collaboration and understanding between stakeholders, and we can use it to raise questions with product, with external stakeholders around ambiguities that you might have within a story. You can leverage it through possibly using example mapping as a way of doing it, or you can just write out your scenarios and go, this is how we believe the system is going to operate, and express it as Gherkin, and put that in front of your business analyst or your product owner or your expert or your customer, if you're working closely with the customer, and they can go, yes, that's what we expect in this scenario, this is what or no, that's slightly different. So you can very much gain a lot of clarity very quickly by the use of Gherkin. So it's part of and supports continuous integration and deployment, because if you hook it up to your automated test framework, then you can have it as part of your pipeline, your CI/CD pipeline. So nothing will get built artifact-wise unless the tests pass, or get deployed unless the tests pass. So you can have Gherkin can play a part in that, absolutely. Therefore, the team get confidence in the feature. It's doing what we expect it to do. And importantly, it gets the whole team interested in testing. Testing no longer becomes one thing that one team member or a part of the business does. It is a whole team activity. So the testers are writing the Gherkin, say the developers are writing the code or are helping to write the code or execute the tests. Everybody is taking an active interest in how the feature or the system is behaving, and also in the maintenance of the test, in order that that actually gets out and meets the quality aspirations of the team. So we're not going to do a round thing of what you think Gherkin is, but just have a think to yourself what you think Gherkin is in regards to how it describes a feature, and have a think about those things from what you might have read or heard. And some people come to this conclusion, where you see a group of blind people trying to describe an elephant. So it's all part of the same thing. And this happens within teams as well, where they are describing parts of the same thing. Everybody has a different is thinking that the system is actually only one small part, when actually it's in its whole. And that's exactly what we're trying to address here. We're looking for a common language that can be understood by various roles within the project. So, we might have, there's product down there looking at something. There we are. So there's product saying it's a spear. There's the QA going, oh, it's a rope. And there's there's the dev saying it's a wall. There's your UI UX person saying it's a fan. Yeah. And there's your external stakeholder thinking it's a tree. And there's executive leadership thinking it's a snake. So common language describing everything. I apologize if I've missed any roles out within any engineering organization. We are all equal. So back to what is Gherkin. So it's business readable, it's domain specific, and it's simple language. It enables behavior driven development, well structured to support automated testing. We generally like the idea of one scenario is test for one thing, so that you don't lose sight of the thing that you're having to test. Could be used for project documentation. Yep. Keyword driven. So we'll get on to some keyword fun in a bit, but they are given when, then, and but. And it's explicit enough to avoid ambiguities around requirements. So a common language to express our requirements in all the roles that a project could understand. So let's have a look at some keywords. Given, when, then, and but are but, pardon the pun, just a few. We've got scenarios. So these are, I'm not going to go through them all, but this is your, what am I testing? Scenarios live in a feature file. You can economize by having background steps that allow you to have a getting you into a certain state before you then execute your many scenarios. We can have an outline that helps us describe what's going on there, and we can also have tags so we can selectively run some of these tests with an automated framework when we want to. So you may have something like @regression, which would run everything, and you may have another tag that is @feature, and so if I have 100 tests, I would tag them all with @regression, so when I run my automated test, all the tests run. And then I have @regression for say or @feature for 50% of those. And then I have another test script that when it runs only picks up that subset of the most, shall we say, most core features that I wanna, or core scenarios that I want to establish. So we can be flexible at how we use this. So let's have a look at an example. So here we are. Here's our feature. So scenario 1. So we have a given, which is your set of preconditions. When I do a thing, then what outcome is achieved? And that's basically it. And then within my feature file, I may have another scenario. And that also has a set of preconditions. It has another event and then another then. And that's broadly how you lay it out. Of course, what's missing up the top is you may have a background step that allows you to have these all within the same feature file in order to run. But that's the gist of it. So features and scenarios. So scenarios, as I've kind of said, is one of the core Gherkin structures, and it starts with a keyword, which is scenario, followed by an optional scenario title. This is the thing I'm going to test, or this is the thing that's going to happen. And then, yes, a feature or a feature file usually contains a list of scenarios. And the idea is that you have one scenario testing one thing. So otherwise it can get quite confusing. So, for example, given. So this is something that, so let's break it down. We have our given statement, which is something that we accept to be true in a scenario. So given I am logged into the application, or given I have launched the application, or given I am looking at the login page, something like that. So they're also sometimes known as preconditions. So here's an example. Here we are. So given username does not exist, or given I'm on the leave page, something like that. Our when, well, it is the event. It's what the business is requesting. It's what our devs are developing, and it's what we as testers are testing. So yeah, it's the same thing. It's not different things. It's the key action that the user performs. For example, when the user logs in, or when I'm on the new employee page, we are consistent. Then this is our assertion. So it's our expected result of our when statement, and it can look like these. So then I see the new employee account details, or then I see the roster edit page, and then we've even got that, and there should be no shifts present. The use of and here is an interesting one, and we're going to touch on that in the next slide. So when there are multiple given, when, or then steps. So here we have an example of a user logging into the system but doesn't click remember me. So we've got a given and an and here, a when, and then a but, and then an and then a but. So we're still using given, when, then, but we're now interspersing these with a little bit extra that we deem important enough to have in the scenario, but hopefully isn't detracting away too much from what it is we're actually trying to test. Dependent upon your organization, you may want to have rigorous standards about the usage of the number of ands and buts within your file. Some organizations don't like any. In other words, all the detail is obfuscated out and is implicit within the single line. So all you ever has is a given, a when, and a then. And the step definitions are then aligned up with that. Some organizations are a little bit more flexible where they will say we allow up to 2. And then it's a slippery slope from there on in. You have what we sometimes find is when Gherkin is used to test stuff manually, we can find that the number of ands increase because they're not being used as an automation method. They're being used as a shorthand way of trying to create steps. So the standards that you apply around the number of, shall we say, intersperse ands and buts is something that you want to take into consideration in order to maintain the succinctness of the scenario. So and but are interchangeable within the Gherkin syntax. So and you would use when you're indicating that a user should carry out an action, whereas but is best suited to when you want to highlight that a user should not perform an action. This is because but in the English language is generally used in the negative context. So using but makes the intent, the test explicit and removes any possible ambiguities. If that's the way you want to go, it's there. You don't have to use it. Which brings us on to behavior. So Gherkin tells you what to do, not how. So which brings us on to what scenario. So I've got my feature, and well, what scenarios do I need? So I've got my story, and I'm coming up with my rules, or my acceptance criteria, and using these rules, I can write the scenario or example to illustrate the behavior of the system. So I can write a happy path or an error path or a table for data-driven scenarios. The important thing here is that each scenario should be independent and isolated from another scenario. So what that means is that within a feature, if I have 3 scenarios, if scenario 1 fails, it should not mean that scenario 2 fails by default. What we want is the ability for, if scenario 1 fails, scenario 2 could quite easily pass, as could scenario 3. They should not be dependent upon each other. So we've got a little user story here, and we're going to have a think of the scenarios that we might want to have. So have a think to yourself, as a builder, I want to buy bricks online so that I can use them for construction. So have a think to yourself, what sort of scenarios might I want? So what we could end up with. So this is an idea. So now that you've thought of your scenarios, here's how you might or might not want to express them versus how you might want to express them. So we're going to give the example of a logon page. So here we log on. We say I'm not logged in, but we're on the login page. When I enter account in the account field, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this, then I see the today page. What a lot of ands. Well, actually, what you probably want is something like this. Given I am on the sign-in page, when I enter valid credentials, then I see the today page. And this is why it can be, by having a descriptive but terse syntax can help you take all of that, all of these steps here, and reconciles them into one entry. We don't mind that we don't know what the account is, or we don't know what the user is, or we don't know what the password is. What we care about the fact is that it's valid. Unless you are going to want to create a scenario that looks at each of these different fields in isolation. So it depends upon the level of feature that you're looking at. But that's the kind of where you probably want to end up. You don't want to be in a situation where you're describing each step. So let's have a look at, for example, a scenario outline. So, big one. So this is run once for each row, and then you have an example section beneath it. So here we have our scenario outline, which is to multiply two numbers. So given I have X and Y, and when I multiply X and Y, then the result should be Z. And here we have the maths. So we have our columns, X, Y, and Z, and then we have examples underneath of the answers that we're looking to get. So that's another way of describing behavior of the system. So we can also have things like a background. So I talked about background steps. So we have a few scenarios where we are logging in as user one, or we're logging in as user two, or we've got another one of trying to log in again to do something else. Here we are, and we have the same step 3 times. And if we reconcile that into a background, we can do this. So we are always going to run given I sign as user one before each scenario. Cool. And then we have our when and then statements in order to support what we're actually trying to test. But we've taken those three, and because we move it into the background, it's drying it up a bit and making it easier to understand what we're actually testing in each scenario. So that's the background. Tags. So I talked about tags, and I talked about things like at regression and or at feature of you can use. So the use of tags can exist at both a feature level or at the scenario level. So you can have groups of features tied together, or scenarios independent of each other, each with a different tag. And these are defined at the feature. So tags defined at the feature level and inherited by all scenarios in the feature. So if I stick it right at the very top of my feature file and I have 3 scenarios, every single scenario within that feature file will be run if we run with that tag. If I define them at the scenario level, so next to each scenario, that will basically override whatever I've defined at the feature level. So these could be excluded or included as needed. So it allows you to be efficient, certainly within your automation frameworks, about how you actually apply this, about how you apply the test. So let's bring this all together. So Gherkin describes how the system behaves. It's easy to pick up, but it takes a lifetime to master and aids collaboration within and outside the team. And it's an activity, as I said, that the whole team can be involved in. You can create or find, I'm sure that there are plenty of places online that have a common set of standards on how to write them. How many way do you want to allow a lot of ands in there, or do you want to keep it very terse? And as I said, it's a whole team activity. So it gets the whole team interested in it. And also, in addition to this, it will also give you early sight of issues as well. Because when you're creating your scenarios, you can have these validated fairly early on by either by your product owner or by the team or by external stakeholders. And you're almost testing it. You're almost testing it before any code has really been written, because you're taking the scenario to whoever and having them validate that that's what they would expect to happen, which is kind of a test. So yeah, there we go. Thank you very much for listening. You can find me on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. It's Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter. But you can also find me on Blue Sky as well. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, take a picture of that, and you'll find my profile. So thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Alistair. Does anybody have any questions for Alistair in regards to Gherkin? If you don't want to speak out, please feel up to ask anything in the chat as well, and we'll read them out for you. Chris asks, any recommended books?
Oh, yeah, there is one that I can't remember the name of it, but it's a book on it's one of the when I first came into contact with Gherkin, it was when I was doing a mobile project. Don't worry, it's not purely for mobile, but it was it was a book that was recommended to me. Let me just quickly find it. In books automated testing. Let me have a look. It's called The Cucumber Book, and you can find it on Amazon. And The Cucumber Book, yes, behavior-driven development for testers and developers. So, yeah, by Matt Wine, Alice Hillersley, and Steve Took. Yeah, and it's part of the Pragmatic Programmers series. There is, if I remember rightly, there is a variation of that book for Java as well. There's also it's also part of a series where it's also got recipes for automating anything as well as another follow-on from it. But that was one of the that was the book that I used to carry around with me and read a lot. So yeah, I would read that, and that will give you a really good in. I'll drop the Amazon link into the main chat because other people might be interested. So not that I live on Amazon at all, but there we are. Yeah.
Cool. I actually might give that a little nosy. Wait for the next Amazon Prime Day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's also, I suppose there's also the I think Cucumber have got a website. Yeah, cucumber.io, which is also can give you quite a lot of information on how to get it going. That's always a good one to look at as well. That'll talk you through various bits and pieces in there. And yeah, as I said, lots of the frameworks support use cucumber or and the whole Gherkin syntax as a means to leverage things like Selenium as a means of driving test automation. But I would say that you can just use Gherkin manually. Will save you an absolute stack load of time if you're just doing. But I just want to write manual tests. Well, yeah, all right. So don't use traditional step test. You just use express stuff as Gherkin, and it'll be a lot. You'll be able to create lots of scenarios very, very quickly.
Yes, I think there's a new section, or it's an add-on in Jira
Mm.
called it's called Zephyr, I think it's called. And yeah, there's a bit in there that's kind of dedicated to Gherkin where you can write the given whens, then it kind of highlights them like the given when, then you write the bit after it, which is kind of a neat little feature.
Yeah, that's right. I think for those of you who use Windows laptops, I think, is it what Notepad has it did have a Gherkin plugin or a Cucumber plugin that you could leverage. As a Mac user, I never went anywhere near it, but there is that as well. There's various things that can support getting stuff into the right format and like doing nice things, doing some nice formatting, like highlighting the keywords, doing your indentation for you. So in order to kind of like make it well readable, really. That's always they're always good things to use. What else? For anybody who's using X-Ray for test management, so X-Ray has a support for writing in much the same way as Zephyr has a support for writing in the same form, the same kind of format as given when then, and will do all the fancy highlighting and formatting for you as well. So yeah, various test management tools support it absolutely, and they'll also support running those tests through your pipeline using a. I haven't actually ever done it, but I've seen the webinars for it or heard about the webinars and the how-tos about how you can link up your Gherkin that you write in your test management suite with your repository where your tests are executed, and you can link it up and run it through there. That sounds really flash.
That sounds good.
It does, yeah. As I heard about it on or saw it on an X-ray um website, but I haven't ever tried to put it together yet. That's one for the future.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions from anyone? I insist that you take this opportunity now while we've got Alistair here. Again, you can come off mute if you want to ask out loud, or again, pop it in the chat and we'll read out the question for you, or just answer it there and then. Don't be shy. We're all friends here. Okay, I'll go with silence is golden. So if no one has any questions, I would like to say massive thank you, Alistair, for doing the talk today. That was very insightful. And I've used but never thought about using buts. I don't know if puns or just the way that I said things. I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that. So yeah, but I actually will actually going to bear that in mind now. That's a good one to know. Yeah, so again, you can find us on, it's called Twitter. X is Twitter, QA Beginners Club, on Instagram at QABC_MCR, and on Facebook, QA Beginners Club. And also we do have our own Slack channel. Our workspace is QABeginnersClub.slack.com. However, if you email QABCMCR@gmail.com and just request an invite, then yes, I'll send you an invite to Slack so you can join our channel. Yes, this will be on the QABC YouTube channel at some point. Can't say when, but yes, it will be up there at some point. So yeah, watch this space, and it'll be on our YouTube channel. Oh, you're very welcome. I just want to thanks again to Alistair for his talk. That was very, very insightful. A little shout out to Searchability as well. Again, for supporting us and us use their Zoom, hence why my name was Leia for the duration of this call is actually Chris. Just want to clarify that. So yeah,
That's fine. I've done it. I've done it too.
I think I've gotten various different names as well, but I'll take this one.
No, but just to say thank you very much for having me, and for affording me the opportunity to share with the group. Yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you, and without further ado, have a great evening, everybody, and yeah, we should hopefully see you in the next month or so for the next talk. So watch this space on Meetup, and have a good evening, everybody. Bye.